Cove Productions presents the Solo in South Philly podcast with your host and local legal whiz, with knowledge, Mark Kachi.
What is good, everyone? Welcome to the Solo in South Philly podcast. Our season 1 is called Law School Reunion, and what we're going to do is go back, way back into time. Each episode, I'll be reuniting with a different law school colleague. We will discuss what led them to law school, their law school experience, and what they do now. My guest today is J.K. Nair. Jay attended University of Southern California, better known as USC. He attended the Thomas M. Cooley Law School and graduated in 2011. Jay passed the bar and is practicing law in Albuquerque, New Mexico, specializing in criminal defense. He opened up his own law firm in 2017, and since then has handled over 1,000 legal matters. I went to law school with Jay. We met in our second year, I believe. We were both big sports fans with different allegiances. We watched a lot of sports together and debated a lot of sports topics together, probably more so than legal philosophical discussions. I've kept in touch with Jay since graduation and was very jealous in 2017 when he opened his own practice. I was always the one that wanted to hang a shingle, and here he is. Jay's been doing it for 5 years strong now. Jay is here to share his journey with us today. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you. It's good to be on.
All right. So you're in beautiful New Mexico now. I can see your wonderful office, but let's talk about life before law school. I think you went to school a little bit older than the age group that we used to hang out with. And you had a whole sort of career before that. But let's start with your undergrad experience. You went to USC, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I started at USC way back. And then afterwards I did work for a while. So I started law school a little bit later than most people in my late 20s. But I thought I brought some good experience. Well, it really helped me when I started my own practice, having that previous experience. I thought it was valuable, not only starting the business, but how to interact with different attorneys or different people through the process of my work. So yeah, I started law school quite late, but I did start at USC in Los Angeles. I was out there for quite some time. Then we met in Lansing, Michigan, when we went to law school. And after that, I started my practice in 2017. Things have been going pretty well. I'm in criminal defense. That's something I've always wanted to do. Just like opening up my own practice, I have always wanted to do criminal defense, and I think I'm blessed to have the opportunity to do both. To have to practice mainly in the criminal defense arena, and also have my own practice. Throughout college, law school, and even really in high school. I mean, I did mock trial and things of that sort. I always enjoyed the criminal defense arena. It keeps my juices flowing, and it's never a dull day. It can be quite hectic. I don't like saying the word. I don't like using the word stressful, but it can get. There's a lot of work to be done, and obviously, a lot of clients have imminent needs in the criminal defense.
Let's go back a little bit. What did you major in at USC?
I did business and economics. So I had I was originally a business major. I graduated with the business degree, but I also had a degree in international economics.
And do you recommend that major for people attending law school, or what are your thoughts on?
So I honestly, it depends what your perspective is. I don't have any regrets, but I do. If I were to do undergrad again, I probably wouldn't do business. I think, especially if you're going to law school, I would suggest doing a major. First of all, it's important, what your grades are. So you got to look at that factor when choosing what to major in. But also, I think there are a lot of majors out there that may prepare you better for maybe not the practice of law. I will say this: I do think the business major may have helped me a little bit in the practice of law, but I really feel it was my business experience out of school that really helped me in setting up my practice. But I feel that doing other majors, maybe such as political science or international relations, things of that sort, where you might do a little bit more reading and analyze those readings. I think that those may prepare you better for law school. But it really doesn't matter what major you have. I do think it's important, though, obviously, that you have good grades. Then you can get into a good law school. If that's usually the priority of people when they're in undergrad. But then I think in the long run, once you start your practice, it's really how you're able to maintain your practice, do your work, and I think that a business major does kind of assist with that. And it really doesn't matter where you went to school or any of that. I think a lot of it has to do really with how you're able to manage, like any other business, stay organized, but also understand the law. And that's something, it's a practice of law. So it really comes after doing many cases. I'll admit early on, I was kind of fresh. There were some things that maybe I did back then that I wouldn't do now, but eventually I think, you get, just like any other profession, sport, talent, anything you develop as an individual. I just think it's when you do more of it, repetition, it becomes almost second nature. So in the area of criminal defense,
what'd you sorry to interrupt. What did you do? What'd you get into after you graduated from USC?
So I worked in various sales jobs, corporate jobs. I also worked in media for a bit. Interned at the local ABC affiliate in Los Angeles, as well as at CNN. But I think the experience that really helped me was working in the corporate realm. I worked at various different companies and organizations doing various sales jobs. So a lot of that is how you're persistent, aggressiveness, manage your clientele. So I think that really did help me in determining or in starting a practice. Some of the things we would use in business world or in corporate world, I kind of adapted some of those skills in starting my practice, and it's really helped, especially when it comes to software, different types of software, things they call it CRM, or different things that you use to manage your clientele and organize your calendar on a day-to-day basis. I think that's those skills were really helpful to me now.
So what led you then from the sales and corporate world to law school? Was it that you didn't like that job? Was it that there was more out there? Was it that you all of a sudden had a passion for law? Like what made you pick up and leave from wherever you were and led you to Lansing, Michigan?
I always had a passion for the law. It's something I wanted to do. It was just in the back burner. I never got around to it right away out of law school. I do believe I developed good skills in the business, corporate sales world, also in media, just understanding different perspectives of what's going on. But it's just something I had really wanted to do since high school. It may not have been a reality for me in an alternate universe or whatever, but it ended up. I ended up taking the step. I was working actually out in Chicago for about a year, and then I took the LSAT and started law school in Lansing. And it's been a great, it's been a journey ever since. It hasn't been easy, but I think I just, I took the step and I took the initiative, same as I did here, coming out and starting my own practice here in Albuquerque. So a lot of that is just, something that I always had in my mind, kind of like you started your own practice, something you envisioned you wanted to do. I remember it was you who would always say that, and as you brought up before, that, we should just hang our shingle or whatever, but you had a good job after law school and all of that. But my thing was, okay, I really want to be able to, when I saw the opportunity, I started getting some work here in New Mexico. And when I saw the opportunity to build my own practice, I kind of seized the moment.
Okay. So tell me about life in Lansing. What was life in law school like for you?
Well, you know what it was like. I mean, it was fun. It was, there was stuff going on. I mean, it was, Lansing, Michigan is definitely not a dull town if you're in a school and an academic setting. I enjoyed it. I also worked out in Lansing, so I got to kind of interact with people in the local community there in Lansing, which is something I like to do anywhere I'm at. I think that's very important to kind of engage in the community. I think a lot of times people go to school or work or whatever, and then they don't consider that their home, or they just kind of take a step back. I thought that, for me, interacting with people in Lansing in the community and really understanding the community beyond the school that I went to was was a good experience for me.
What kind of work did you do while you were in law school?
So I worked for a school, as dealing with admissions, and so I interacted with a lot of students who were local to the community, so that was a very good opportunity. We couldn't really work full time in law school if you had a certain number of units, but there were a few semesters where I worked. I had less classes, and then I was able to work there full time. But it was a good experience, and I really enjoyed the people I worked with, also the students that I was able to help out.
Any recommendations to people that may be listening that are thinking about going to law school?
Just do it. I think like anything else, I think a lot of people have hesitations, different things. I understand finances can be difficult, especially with all this talk about student loans and all of that. But I think if you really have the passion to do something, just do it. I think eventually everything will fall into place. Again, law school isn't for everybody, but I don't believe, I know there were a lot of people who around me, I think I made it known that I wanted to go to law school. So a lot of people around me kind of supported me or pushed me along to do that. But then there were also people who would tell me, you don't want to go to law school or don't become a lawyer or whatever. Maybe they just weren't happy with the practice of law or whatever. Maybe they had a bad situation in law school. Understand that it's a long commitment, but if you really want to do it, just start researching about it and put your plan into action. Otherwise, it'll never happen. And age, as I'm sure both of us know, age can creep up on you, especially when you're going to school, working, grad school, all of that. So I think It's very important that, try to do it as early as possible. But I think there's a time right now, I think it may be a good time there's probably less lawyers now than when we were, or at least less people in law school than when we were. It was probably the zenith when we were over there back in when we went to law school. But I think the important thing is to understand, yes, the legal job market can be a little bit tricky, but I think if you do what you really want to do and stick with it, whether you start your own practice or whether you work for somebody else, I think I'm thinking in the next several years, we may have a shortage of lawyers. People are going into other professions or not wanting to go to grad school and things of that sort. So I think it would still be a good opportunity. The field of law obviously is not going anywhere, and there is definitely a need for lawyers.
So when did you graduate from Lansing?
2011.
2011.
Right.
All right. So then where did you go, and what bar did you study for, or what was your path following law school?
So I clerked at the public defender's office in Los Angeles. And then after that, I went to, so I ended up passing a uniform bar exam, probably a few years in after they had started it, maybe a year in, out in Phoenix, Arizona. And then I was contemplating where to go. Thought about possibly going to New York. At that time, Illinois was not part of the uniform bar exam, and that's where my family is and where I grew up. And didn't really like the Phoenix area, and going back to California wasn't an option. So I kind of just did a little exploring, and then I got some work here in New Mexico, and I realized since it was work that I could do independently, I then decided to open this office, which I opened back in 2017, and just been here ever since. And then things started picking up, and I got super busy within probably about 6 months to a year, and it really hasn't slowed down.
So tell me about the uniform bar exam. I didn't have that experience. I took state of Pennsylvania, and people around me took New Jersey. It's a relatively new thing, isn't it? The uniform bar
it's a new thing, probably around, I'm thinking around 2012 or around the time we were graduating from law school. That's when the uniform bar exam started. It's basically, if you pass the uniform bar exam, you could transfer that to other states. They call it. So for example, if you pass the bar in Arizona, and there's different scores, there's different threshold scores for each state. So let's just say you score high enough in Arizona, then you can practice in Arizona. But if your number is good enough for, say, now Illinois is in there, for Illinois or New York or New Mexico or whatever, then you can practice in those states. So it's kind of like reciprocity, but it's right after you take the bar exam, as opposed to having to wait. With actual reciprocity, you have to wait some places 4 or 5 years before you can just transfer on motion or reciprocity. In this particular situation with the UBE, the uniform bar exam, you can take that right out of law school, and then just you'll have options as to where you want to practice.
So what are the components of the exam? Do you have the 200 multi-state multiple choice, and then there's an essay component, but I'm guessing they're not state-specific questions? Is that how it works?
Yeah, well, it's a more broad exam. So you will have your standard UBE multiple choice, 200 questions, and then you'll also have the essays, but it is specific to each state. So, for example, if you're in New Mexico, there'll be a lot more tribal law. Arizona will have more things specific to Arizona, and different states will so they can still test you on the local law, but it is very heavy on federal, stuff that's standard across the board throughout the United States.
Okay, gotcha. So you were taking it was like Arizona specific, but it had like something set there that if you scored a certain score, you could pass into each different state accordingly. Is that correct?
Yeah. So if you take it in Arizona and you score high enough, you could possibly practice in many states, whether it be New Mexico or New York or Illinois now, and different states. I believe Michigan isn't, and I'm not sure. But you would have the option to practice in multiple states. I don't know. You would probably know better, but I don't know. Is Pennsylvania a member of the UB?
I should know, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Yeah.
It would have been nice, to have more options, but I don't know. So, okay. So you took the bar exam, and how specifically did you end up in New Mexico?
So like I said, I started getting some work here. I got some work here, and then I just got really, dug my head into my work, was really passionate about what I was doing. Obviously, it was limited in my, funds when I was first starting my practice, and didn't have much work. But work started coming to me pretty quickly, and then now I'm really comfortable here. So even if I were to go to other jurisdictions, I feel like I would be kind of a stranger in my own. If I go back to my family in Illinois where I grew up, or maybe say California where I had gone undergrad and clerked there at the public defender's office, I'd have to now meet a whole new set of people and do all of that. Right now, I think I'm comfortable here. Things are going well. So we'll see. That doesn't mean there could be changes in the future, but right now I'm happy with at least having this as a base. I could always do work in other places, but I do really enjoy my work here in New Mexico, helping out the community. Doing something I like. I mean, it's not, the area of criminal defense. I mean, I do a few other areas of law, but like I said before, a majority of my work is criminal defense. And, it's not going to be, may not be the richest doing criminal defense, but there is a lot of, I feel a reward in helping out people who are, for the most part, pretty appreciative of the work. If they see you fighting, if they see you working for them. Most of the clients, I believe, are pretty appreciative of the work you do.
So would you say it was advantageous to go to New Mexico? And this is what I mean. When we graduated, you touched on this earlier, we were at the height of law school admissions, both at our school, right, and at other schools. The economy also was doing bad. So it was really hard for attorneys that graduated around our time to find legal work that paid. I do remember seeing something about Nebraska and Wisconsin, had a lawyer shortage, so to speak. And I know some people that were from those states that seemed to get jobs relatively easy. So was New Mexico in a place at a time where it was easier to find work than other states?
First of all, my theory is that there's going to be a shortage of lawyers in general coming up here soon, if we're not already there. But as far as New Mexico is concerned, yes, definitely there's a need for attorneys. I mean, there's been, um, just like, it's not just a pandemic. I mean, yeah, the pandemic, it caused a lot of turnover, I believe, in a lot of professions. But even before that, I believe there is a need here for good attorneys, especially in criminal defense field, whether it be working with the public defender, the DA's office, or as a private attorney or contract attorney, whatever. There's, I think there's a good opportunity here. And there are a lot of places that are hiring for good. There's a need for good quality work, or if you want to start your own practice, there are ways to do that as well. But I do think that New Mexico definitely has a shortage, which would be maybe not necessarily good for us here in New Mexico, but it is good for maybe somebody who is looking for an opportunity to really either get some experience or really become a good attorney with a high case volume.
How many laws?
It can also get a little hectic because there is quite a bit of, I'll tell you, a lot of lawyers here are overworked because there's just a lot of cases to be had.
How many law schools are there in New Mexico?
One. University of New Mexico.
Okay. So you figure there's one law school and a decent percentage of people will want to leave to go to other states for a variety of reasons. So you have a small group of new lawyers coming out into the world, whereas in other states you have different situation. Did you watch Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, that whole?
I watched Breaking Bad, and it's funny. I watched it actually before I moved out to Albuquerque. I had been to Albuquerque a few times previously, in the early 2000s, but I had watched Breaking Saul, but I didn't really know the landscape of here. I think I went back and saw part of an episode or something, and I was pretty much recognizing everything. I think the parking structure I live in was one of the most famous scenes there, where they got into a fight with the rooftop of the parking structure. I washed my car at the car wash that I guess Walter White was laundering all his money in. And, sometimes you'll see the Breaking Bad tour bus and all of that. I don't think that show is a very good, while it might be entertainment for a lot of people, I think we've got serious issues here with unfortunately, majority of the cases I'm dealing with now are fentanyl, but previously it was meth. And I think it kind of glamorized something, which, I think if you look at that show, maybe from an entrepreneurial perspective, outside of what they're actually doing, it may be a good thing. But but the substance of what they're doing really isn't helping. I think a lot of people, and there's definitely a serious issue here with meth and now fentanyl, which I think is spreading all over the country.
And you said you never watched Better Call Saul?
Better Call Saul, I think I got into a few episodes of that, maybe 6 episodes, but I never really got into that now. But which is kind of funny because I am an attorney here in New Mexico, and I've been told sometimes that I kind of remind the people of Saul, but my demeanor, I think when you and me talking is a little different than how I'm in court or with clients and stuff like that.
Sure.
As you probably know, I have different, I wouldn't say different faces, but I have different ways of communicating under different circumstances. So,
well, as a lawyer, you're a translator. That's what people always forget, that the best lawyers can talk street with street, can talk Latin to the judge, can talk candidly with those who need to be that way. The true great lawyers are good communicators. So I think that's what you're saying. You put on the different hats to wear to speak to the party that needs to be spoken to in that way.
Yeah, and there's a balance, especially when you're representing clients. On one hand, you want to, the law, you're the lawyer, and you know the framework of the structure. But on the other hand, you also have to respect what your client wants to do. So you're really only a counselor. You're only making recommendations. It's not like your way or the highway. It's really up to the client's the boss. And you really have to communicate them to either really understand what they should do, but if they don't, that you really have to respect their wishes. That's your job.
Yeah. So back to Better Call Saul, because one, I highly recommend. I realize you probably don't have much free time on your hand, but if you're ever in a binging,
I do. Actually, the pandemic has streamlined some of our work, so there is more stuff we can do remote, which is good and bad. But I think now we're coming back to more of a hybrid, where the more important hearings are being done in person. Other ones are remote, but it gives us more time to maybe get a little bit desk work done during the day. But I will admit I am super busy. but I do make time in the evenings or weekends or whatever to watch TV, Netflix, the news.
So here's where I was going with that is number one, I think arguably, and it could be recency bias, but I think arguably it's better than Breaking Bad. Watch it from end to end. You will get sucked in just like Breaking Bad did. The character development is great. He's got that sidekick, Kim, who is amazing and a fan favorite. But one thing I think you'll appreciate, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about this. In the beginning of the show, towards the beginning of the show, he's made it. He passed the bar. He's trying to make it on his own. So he's hustling and he's doing these court-appointed cases and he's charming the clerk by giving her Beanie Babies and things like that, and submitting his applications to get paid checks and having to basically just take whatever he can. I know you haven't seen the show, but would you say that describes the life of a solo who's just starting out, having to hustle to make it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like any other TV show, unfortunately, I've gotten into the Jeffrey Dahmer show now, and that is, I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff that they like to maybe create or maybe go off stereotypes and different things to do that. Although, and I'm sure they do that in Better Call Saul. I mean, although that's not a reality show. I mean, I guess Dahmer's depicting.
You're saying when they take liberties with the facts, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, if you have with Better Call Saul, I think that it's proportional to how somebody's starting a practice or whatever. But all the high end drama that they have or whatever, I don't think is there. But yeah, I mean, you're strapped for cash when you're starting out. You don't know how much work you're kind of in this land of the unknown. You have a lot of you start getting cases, and there's obviously a lot of work and a lot of anxiety, obviously, when you're starting out. But I think eventually you start building a reputation, and you start getting a case flow that allows you not only to pay your bills, but really maybe have a better lifestyle like you would with any other job as you progress and have a lot of experience.
Did you take court-appointed work when you first started?
Yeah, I mean, I still do a lot of contract work. I mean, whether it be criminal defense, I have an Albuquerque contract for felonies, misdemeanors, a statewide homicide contract now. I still have juvenile cases that I do contractually. So a lot of my work is really what not only pays the bills, but gives takes a lot of my time is our cases that are contracted out either from the public defender or from the Supreme Court of New Mexico in regards to juvenile cases, child welfare cases, and things of that sort.
So is it overflow work, or is it that there's a conflict of interest and they
conflicts, overflow work, a little bit of both? Yeah.
And how would you describe that work?
It gives you a good experience. It definitely keeps you busy, but it's not for everybody. I will tell you that some of the cases you're getting that are conflicted out may be more difficult to handle or whatever, and then there may have been a delay in the process or whatever. But it is a lot of it is in the practice of law is not only what you know or what you're able to communicate, but also how you're able to manage your clientele and really make sure people are on the same page. Because obviously this is when you're dealing with somebody who you're representing as a criminal defendant, it's probably one of the worst most likely one of the worst times in their life, right? And they're stressed out and they really want to get out of the position. Obviously, if they're incarcerated, they want to get out of jail. If they're out on pretrial or whatever, they want to get out of pretrial services. They want to get the case dismissed. So usually in those situations, you're dealing with people who expect results, and it's difficult. But it's a lot of it's just making sure that you're on the same page with your clients.
Do the clients think that they're getting shortchanged because it's work that's referred out? Maybe completely unaware that they're getting your services, right? And not having to pay for it. Do they ever feel that they're getting shortchanged?
No, I think that's where you build a reputation, and if people know that you're fighting for them, I don't really think that there's much. I mean, as far as being shortchanged, yeah, there are clients who might think of you less because they're not paying for you, or you're
Right.
contracted out to the state or the public defender, or whatever. But I think a lot of it is just if they know that you're fighting for them. And I treat up my cases. I mean, I do have private cases on my own, as well as the cases that are contracted out to me, or conflicted out to me, or whatever. But I may basically have a process, and I fight for all my clients. And it would be the same process I would follow if I'm being paid several $1,000s a retainer, as opposed to something I would do when I'm with a public defender client. So, and I think clients see that, and I for the most part, I believe, have done good work.
Right. So, what is criminal defense like in New Mexico? You mentioned it earlier, but is there a huge drug problem? What are you mainly seeing?
I would say, I don't want to give a percentage on it, but I would say a good majority of the cases have some indirect, either it involves drugs itself, or drugs cause the crime to occur. And as I said, fentanyl is a big issue right now. We had meth, so oxycodone, you have all these different drugs that have been out there. But I would think a lot of that. I don't see here as much involving maybe drugs such as cocaine or crack or any of that, but there is a lot of meth, fentanyl, seems a little bit heroin, but not as much. As I would say fentanyl has probably taken over now as a main one, the main drug that is causing a lot of trouble here, and then meth would be second now, I believe.
So, what's your personal thoughts and philosophies on this drug crisis, specifically to where you're at?
I wish I had an answer to that. And I don't know. It's probably rare that you hear a lawyer saying that they don't have an answer to something, or they're what. But I don't have I don't know. I mean, the drugs are out there. People are making. I understand that fentanyl can now be almost made. Fentanyl pills can almost be made. They have a machine, that at-home machine, almost like a coin making machine, that you can use to create fentanyl now. And meth is out there. So, I mean, I guess some people would say you throw these people in jail. Other people would say treatment. I think, hardcore treatment is very good. But it's not for everybody. There are people who are going to run out, or maybe get back on drugs, or whatever. But I think it's a tough situation. I think it's something that fundamentally needs to be ingrained in people from a young age, but obviously with a lot of people, maybe they just don't have the family support or different things to help them understand that they can't be doing hard drugs such as meth and fentanyl, which can really cause the majority of the crimes really that we're seeing out there right now.
So fentanyl, I could be wrong, but is fentanyl a prescription drug?
So it can be prescribed, but it's really just what we're seeing mostly is fentanyl just being not it's illegal. So those are the situation, but it can be prescribed as an opioid. And I'm sure you've heard about the whole opioid crisis. So it really started, I guess, back with the pharmaceutical companies or different companies that were creating these and marketing them to people, and now there's a huge black market for it. And that's, again, like as I said, that's what's causing a lot of the crimes that we're dealing with.
And these crimes that you're seeing, are we talking about possession, or are we talking about people that are involved in manufacturing, distribution, selling?
That's a good question. And I deal with that a lot. And it's been a source of frustration for me. A lot of cases are possession, but sometimes I believe, in my opinion, some of them are overcharged and considered trafficking. Trafficking here is similar to the statutes for dealing in other states. For example, I was dealing with a case in Indiana. There was a person here, a defendant here, but there was a prior from situation from Indiana that I had to deal with. And over there, trafficking is when you're going over state lines in regards to transferring drugs. Here, trafficking is just essentially dealing. There's a separate dealing statute there in other states such as Indiana. But yeah, so trafficking is essentially the possession with intent to distribute. But a lot of times I believe it's overcharged. You'll have maybe somebody who will have a few grams of meth or whatever, and then they'll say that it's trafficking, and they may have an expert come in and claim that to be, say that from his experience that's trafficking, and then the jury will believe that to be trafficking. So that's kind of where we stand. I mean, I get a lot of possession cases, but I do get a lot of trafficking cases as well. And I think there's a fine line between because it's also, most of the time it's not circumstantial. You don't have the act, unless it's an undercover operation, you don't have the recording of people actually transferring or making a sale or a deal. So you're basing it on the amount, or whether there's scales, baggies, cash, different things that would be indicative of trafficking.
Would you say there's a lot of ignorance surrounding this issue? People don't really understand the drug. They know it's bad, but you have two camps, users and people that just think it's bad.
Yeah, I'd agree with
this
that.
is what I mean, right? Say someone gets caught with a certain amount of drugs and they're pushing for intent to sell, right? The prosecution is. And as the defense, you're trying to get into the nuances and saying that, no, this is not enough to sell. Do you feel like the common person is equipped to understand what this drug is, what it's used for, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I don't think so. I know actually I had a hearing this morning where I got there was a possession case and the person violated with a new possession case, and the officer based, I guess their preliminary analysis is through a website, drugs.com, and you would just put the number and the letter in there, and it could come up as, in this particular case, it came up as oxycodone, and they believe that to be illegally possessed by this individual. But if you look at, and then when you put the color, it becomes more specific. But when I put that letter and that number, it pulled up a lot of other drugs, such as I think there was Adderall, there was different medications that could possibly be legal as well, or at least legal with a prescription. So to say that was particularly oxycodone may not necessarily be accurate unless you've done the actual the test on it in the lab. But usually when they're doing preliminary inquiries, they may just go on this website, put in the letter and the number and the color, and it would pop up multiple things. But if they have a hunch that it's oxycodone and oxycodone comes up as one of the options, then that's really how they base their preliminary probable cause determination.
Gotcha. Yeah. So there is a lot of gray area in this.
But I believe so. And but I'm coming at it from a perspective of somebody who's done my entire legal career has been doing criminal defense, at least since I've been licensed to practice law. It's so I come at things differently. I think everything needs to be proven, but in the early stages of the cases, we're not dealing with the beyond a reasonable doubt standard or anything. We're dealing with lower standards such as probable cause, and maybe they can base drugs.com. But this was a situation where they wanted to hold the client in custody, and there's a clear and convincing evidence standard to that. And I think when you're dealing with a situation like that, I believe that more should be offered than something that they've pulled off of a website called drugs.com, when there are multiple other medications out there, or legal or illegal, that could match the same equation or letter number formula or whatever.
Now, does New Mexico or Albuquerque area, do they participate in any diversionary programs for people?
Oh yeah. I mean, Albuquerque is, I would say we're pretty good about that. There are diversionary programs. We try to, before I was on with you, we were working on trying to get some people into an inpatient facility. Sometimes when all hope is lost and clients being preventatively held or in custody, we try to get them a bed, an inpatient facility, and sometimes the judges are willing to reconsider based on that. Ideally, in situations like that, if they can get maybe an intensive outpatient program or some sort of treatment to get released where they can go to treatment on their own. But in some situations, we need to push for an inpatient treatment. There's programs, there's a program called ATP for people who are at the county jail. It's about a 30-day program where if they have substance abuse issues, they can address that and possibly be released if they complete that. DOC, Department of Corrections prison, I don't believe that should be used as a vehicle for rehabilitation when it comes to drug rehabilitation. But when you go to some of the smaller jurisdictions out here in New Mexico, a lot of times there's a program called RDAP, which helps people with substance abuse issues, drug issues, whatever. And you have to go to DOC for that. And I think there's a minimum of 2 years or something. You need to be a DOC to be a part of that program. So unfortunately, that's kind of used as a vehicle for treatment for people in maybe some smaller towns where they don't have as much options for treatment as they do here in Albuquerque.
It's good to hear that they're not just hitting the victims often in these cases of addiction hard, that those that are willing to make amends are given sort of a second chance if they fulfill the conditions on their end and put in the work.
And I don't want to put my, again, I'm a criminal defense attorney, but also, maybe if I can put my judge hat here, I'm never going to put on my a DA hat, but I'll put a judge hat on here. And it's a very difficult situation when you're dealing with drugs, because yes, like you're saying, there's a willingness. A lot of times there's a willingness. They want to get, it's a demon, whatever you want to call it, you want to get over it. And they know that's causing the majority of their problems. But at the same time, if they keep reoffending, and especially if it's violent or dangerous crimes, then even if there's a willingness, it becomes a situation where it could be a danger to themselves and possibly the community as well. So I get that. I understand that whole perspective of things. But I think when you're dealing with people who are low-level offenders or people who are younger or just have not had much interaction with the criminal justice system, especially when you're dealing with nonviolent cases, I think the best, in my opinion, the best way to go is treatment.
Gotcha. All right. So for this section of the program, Jay, the time is yours. So I'd like you to promote, whether it's your legal services, a cause that you're passionate about, a side hustle, whatever it is you want.
Well, yeah. So again, hopefully most people say they don't want to see me, or they don't want to give me business because that means they're probably in trouble. That's not necessarily true. I do a scattering of other cases as well. Civil cases in regards to different few lawsuits I've been dealing with. I've done some family law. I've done a couple family law cases. I'm not a big fan of family law. I feel like it's a very emotional area of the law, but I've done a few family law cases and things of that sort. So yeah, if you ever have a need for work, or you need a lawyer for any sort of assistance, just give me a call, or look me up, call me, send me an email, and we can go from there. But yeah, I mean, right now I would say I'm pretty content, and I call myself a criminal defense attorney, and now I think that is who I am as far as and that is what my practice is. So and I don't think that's going to change anytime in the near future.
So, and I'll put your phone number, website on the show notes, but what is your website?
It's www.jknair.com. So it's just the letter J, letter K, Nair.com. I've had a new website. I've been having some trouble uploading videos. I have a section we call Legal News Analysis of the Week. I know I'm similar to your podcast, I guess, but it's basically different videos where originally I was talking about different topics of the law, so search and seizure, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment statement, different kind of things like that. But now I'm getting more into just weekly. I'll try to do it weekly. Try to find a news topic and just obviously a news topic that involves um, a legal issue. So, for example, when we had the Johnny Depp thing, I had fun with that. We talked about did some analysis, even though I don't deal with defamation. I thought I'd throw my 2 cents into that. And
Yeah,
then
you did a breakdown of the Roe v. Wade that was overturned.
I did that. Yeah. And that was, that was a difficult one because I really had to go in. There was a lot of, that was really thorough. I went through the entire opinion, and I broke it down. I thought that was a good, that was probably not one of my more entertaining ones, but it was definitely an area where I felt there was a lot of substance and there are arguments on both sides. I'm not going to go into my opinions of or how I would come down. And I said that in the video as well, but I thought I did provide a good breakdown of that based on my reading of that opinion. I also most recently talked about something that's actually pretty close to home here in New Mexico, the situation with Alec Baldwin and that shooting up in at the ranch in Santa Fe. So discuss that and various things. One time I think it was the anniversary of the car chase of O.J. Simpson. Discussed that, something I remember when I was in school as a kid, and gave me a little bit of inspiration maybe to become an attorney and a criminal defense attorney in that. But I think there was it tries to be, I try to be entertaining on some of them, but a lot of it is just trying to be informative and topics that really grasp people's attention.
Yeah, so that brings me to my next segment. I call it "Explain It to Me Like I'm a 4-Year-Old." It's a line taken from Philadelphia that Denzel uses very effectively. So is there any sort of legal concept, and this does not constitute legal advice, you can feel free to add any disclaimer, but is there any sort of legal concept or legal myth that you would like to dispel that you could share with the audience? Maybe if they're not even a lawyer or a law student, they would be able to grasp what you're talking about.
Well, the one thing that bothers me the most sometimes is when clients will come in and maybe they're from jail or whatever, and they're frustrated and they'll start saying that we're colluding with the state or something like that. That's probably the thing that bothers me the most because of any complaint, because it's really questioning my zealous advocacy of my clients, which I take very seriously. So that's one thing. I think people sometimes think that whether you're contracted to the state or you work for the state, that because of that you're in cahoots with maybe the prosecution or whatever. But in my particular case, or even private attorneys, I may just think that you're just trying to work out a deal and you want to be favorable, friendly with the prosecution. So that's something that bothers me a lot. There is too. I mean, obviously, just like in your profession, you have to have a good working relationship with people, but that doesn't mean that we're in any way working in tandem with the district attorney's office or anything like that. Legal myth. I'm trying to think what would be myth.
Is there anything on TV shows that you see that you think?
No, that's good. Okay, I'm glad you went there. So I think a lot of these TV shows, first of all, trials are entertainment. They're great for TV, but I can count. I mean, it's very rare that I've been going to more trials, but it's not like we're going to trial all the time, especially when you're doing high level felonies. Maybe if you're a Metro Court attorney or whatever, and you're doing, you got a lot of DUIs coming in or whatever. Maybe there are more trials going on, bench trials or jury trials. But as far as jury trials, when you're dealing with felony cases are concerned, a lot of times if you file the appropriate motions and do different things, you can either get the cases dismissed or get an agreement that would be favorable to the client. So I think there's that. I think a lot of times the discovery is done, and this is especially in civil cases, but I feel like New Mexico, especially Albuquerque, has certain rules that I think are very good for defense attorneys and their clients in regards to excluding certain evidence and doing different things beforehand. And so you don't get to court. So everybody thinks you'll get to court like Perry Mason. Perry Mason's obviously the name everybody throws out when it comes to like the famous show or attorney, but anything, Law and Order, whatever. It's like you'll have the smoking gun or the guy who shocks everyone in court. That never happens because everybody's prepared. If that did happen, then you'd probably have some serious issues with the judge and maybe some the powers that be, because you really should be handling that before trial. So I think that's one of the big myths. And there's I don't think the practice of law has been too different than, quite very different than what I expected. But I think I have gained a lot of respect for not only understanding people who are going through difficult situations, whether it's drug use or different things, but also the different areas, what people, whether it be the judges or district attorneys and all the, the moving pieces or the parts of this big puzzle when you're dealing with the system or whatever as it's called. I think it's important for what I've been able to understand is different perspectives that I may not have looked at or really understood prior to practicing.
Great. And I read that on your website, you've handled 1,000 matters in the.
I think the number keeps changing. Went down actually. I don't know what's going on that site, but I'm pretty sure I'm over 1,000, maybe close to 1,100 cases now. Between, I've been, when I was starting out, I was actually traveling, so I didn't have the contract here in Albuquerque. I was traveling all around the state wherever I could get work. I was in Roswell, New Mexico a lot. I went to southern New Mexico, went up to Taos, different places. But now I'm pretty well situated here in Albuquerque and get a steady stream of cases. But yeah, I have handled a lot of cases. There's never, got the phone ringing in the next office. Like, luckily I have a great staff, a law clerk and a paralegal who are great. But I think, and this goes back to the sales, business, newsroom, whatever. This is can be a high pressure, similar to high pressure newsroom or high pressure boiler room or whatever. You got calls coming in. A lot of times people are upset. But then you got to be managing your, cases or your hearings. And that's what's kind of helped with being on Zoom, get a little bit more time maybe to take a step back when you're when you're working out of your office or your home or whatever. But when you're going into court all the time, as I was, and running around like a madman, it's very difficult. I remember my office day would start probably around 5:00 when I'd be done with court, and I'd be catching up on a lot of paperwork, and sometimes be in my office till 11, 12 o'clock at night. So it's not that bad anymore. And also I obviously have a lot more experience now and know what I'm doing more. So I think it's very, it's a positive experience, I think, to have that experience. But again, you got to manage it the right way. It can be quite hectic with the phones ringing and everything going on and different moving parts.
Right. Well, I think our time is up. Thank you so much for joining us, Jay. I hope to make it out there one of these days.
Yeah, you were supposed to come out here.
Yeah, COVID, like many things, ruined that dream of mine. Wanted to check out your office. It looks beautiful right now.
Yeah.
Maybe
we're having the beautiful Albuquerque balloon fiesta. So today's a cloudy day, so the balloons couldn't take off. Yesterday was cloudy, but I think it was raining and windy today. So it's pretty overcast. But when it's bright, sunny skies, you'll see balloons all over the place till about 10 a.m. So it's a nice place. Come visit. Yeah,
we'll eat at Pollos Hermanos, right?
Well, it's actually a place called Twisters, and
okay.
Not a big fan of the food, but yeah, that's
all right.
For another
Great.
day.
Well, yeah, thanks again for joining. To all my listeners, stay solid. And Piano Man, take us out.
Need a lawyer? Are you having financial, criminal, or family challenges? Call or text the Mark Kachi Law Firm, 215-439-7899.